our conversation, Eternal Forest Conversation, which I am sure you already know, they're regular conversations once a month. They are, today we are hosting Terra Agora Foundation, and it's a real pleasure to do this before the end of the year. And I'm going to just say at the beginning that Terra Agora is a very special new foundation that is being formed in Portugal right now. And the reason why it is appearing is because there is a need for the land to be taken out of the circulation of selling and buying, out of the circulation of the market. There is a very strong connection, I feel, and a very strong resonance with the cause of this foundation, between this cause and the cause of Eternal Forest, as I see it. And if you don't know, my name is Evgenia Emets. I'm an artist. I'm a poet. I'm currently based in Portugal. I'm living here. I'm working internationally. And 3 years back, I discovered my own cause in my art that became really a center for all my future work, which is Eternal Forest. And I wrote it in the chat that I'm a leader of the project Eternal Forest. But then I thought to myself, well, I don't actually know who is leading who right now. Is it me leading the project, or is it the project leading me and other people who are joining? So for those who don't know, I'm going to make a small introduction about what the project is, as I'm continuing to admit people. So sorry if I'm getting a little bit distracted. And then I'm going to give you a very brief update about where we are with the project, because it's evolving every day, every week, every month. There are new things happening. There are new people joining and contacting us. And after that, we will have an introspection moment. I will invite you to join breakout rooms. In a random way, you'll meet new people. And we will reflect on a specific question, which is related, of course, to the subject of our conversation later on with Terra Agora Foundation. So, what is an Eternal Forest? Eternal Forest is an art project in the first place, is a multidisciplinary project, which I started 3 years ago with motivation to understand why we have the problem of deforestation everywhere in the world, and why we are very slow in finding solutions to actually battle this deforestation and to preserve and to create biodiverse natural spaces. And I started this project in Portugal because of the ecological devastation that I saw here when I moved to this beautiful country, because of all the monocultures of eucalyptus and other trees that exist here, and very quick disappearance of forests. Then I realized that this problem is not just in Portugal, but everywhere in the world. So I decided, why don't I continue doing this work and continue connecting to people and communities? The way I work is mainly through listening, deep listening to the people, but also listening to the ecosystem and trying to understand where are those empty points and empty spaces which we need to connect, and where we need to reconnect to be able to kind of change this, to kind of change our perspective and our ways of looking, thinking and doing. And about a year ago, I kind of moved from working in more or less towards raising awareness about the problem, towards thinking about solutions. And I realized that I'm very drawn to think about what are we actually missing in the forests. And what attracted me is the idea of a possibility of creating or recreating a sacred forest space where there is a potential for us to go into that space and to find a way of reconnecting with ourselves and with nature, from which, by the way, I don't think we are disconnected. I think we are just a little bit confused. So hold on a second, I'm just gonna change the view because I have always one person for some reason in my screen. Just do something. Sorry about the stop. Okay. And so, and then this idea came to me, why don't, instead of just doing one forest sanctuary, perhaps there is a real need in the world to activate different organizations, people, communities, to think how can we create those forest sanctuaries everywhere. And so I started working towards that idea. At first it was just me, then more people were joining. So what is this place? This place is, of course, a protected forest. It is forest that invites more biodiversity than any other place. It is probably a place that needs support at the beginning and in some cases full regeneration from scratch because the place can be degraded as a space, as a land. But then what if we actually left this place and just supported it once in a while, and we were finding ways of going there as persons, as communities? What if we found ways of connecting, celebrating, creating cycles, creating art, creating deep listening experiences? And what if through these listening experiences, we actually could discover what is it that that place can teach us, what kind of wisdom, what kind of offers, what kind of solutions could we find for the problems that we are stuck with from that kind of connection and that kind of experience. And so the way I see the design of this space, that forest sanctuary, is of course the job of not just an artist. However, I believe artists could be leaders in certain ways and in communities. But of course, it's a collaborative approach to regenerating land and to regenerating the forest space with ecologists, people who actually plant trees, people who design spaces, landscape architects, biologists, and communities more than ever. And I truly believe that communities have a role to play in helping to regenerate and protect those forest spaces in perpetuity. My aim to create 1,000 forest sanctuaries and to protect them for 1,000 years. And both numbers are quite symbolic. However, I believe that they are as symbolic as actual real. So there is a meaning in trying to imagine something that would last 1,000 years. It's more than 7 generations. Could we think about this long term, about this kind of vastness of time? Why not? Maybe it's actually the whole point that we stop thinking in the long term. And where we are with this project, we have a small team right now, and there are more people that will be joining this team. It's all volunteer based for now. But we arrived at the point where we actually want to create 2 forest sanctuaries in the next year. One in Ericeira, where I'm based in Portugal, and another one in the north. The place is called Abrigada Bitarrigen. It's a new co-housing community which already expressed interest in creating a forest sanctuary there. And we will try to do it in parallel with 2 completely different communities, completely different locations, completely different ecological perspective. And by doing this in parallel and documenting the process and creating a series of events and experiences with communities, emerging a circle of guardians that would then bring people in, we would try to emerge a model, a blueprint based on which we could actually offer this as a vision for other communities, other organizations, other persons, private owners of land around the world, whereby they could take this model and adapt it to their reality, to their land, and possibly create one of each in different places. So what I would like to ask you, if you see or hear about specific organizations or specific funding opportunities that can be valuable for us to look at in the next few months, either national, Portuguese, European, or international, where we could collectively, with my team and also with the local circles, work on this kind of project to support that work in the next 1 or 1.5 years. I would really appreciate. And I will post later the links for the Facebook group, which you can join, and also for the small presentation on Eternal Forest, which you can look at. And I'm sure you have lots of questions about the details. As always, devil is in the details. And there is ways to clarify that through sharing the vision and clarifying the vision the more we work on it. And there are different elements of that work, and one of the elements that I would like to actually propose today to think and speak about and to share is what is really that idea of guardianship of the land, and what is that idea of being a caretaker in the long run as an individual and as a community. And we know that every land we look at, there were generations of people who were living there, who were working with that land, who were looking after that land, and we can kind of look at it from different perspectives. The way the state the land arrived to us, if we are for example, an organization or a community, we can, of course, see all the traces of human activity, sometimes hidden, sometimes quite visible. But what if we imagine that we could really do something with that land that would leave it better than we found it? What if we could actually think about many generations ahead that are going to follow us, and what kind of space would we want them to encounter? What kind of space would we want them to walk into, and how do we want them to relate to that space? So I would like to invite you right now to think and to meditate a little bit about how do you imagine that long-term stewardship, and what does it mean in practical terms to be a good caretaker of a land. And with this, I'm going to send you to meet some people in this gathering. So I'm going to create some breakout rooms, and I'm going to give all of us about 15 minutes. So at 5:37, sorry, what is it now? Yes. Yes, let's say at 5:40 we'll come back. I'll give you a little bit more time, and we will come back, and maybe we are quite a small circle today. There will be maybe other people coming in, but I would like us to also share what emerged for you, some valuable harvest that you heard. And when you enter the room, it's like we all meet each other. I would love you to introduce yourself and just say a couple of words about yourself, and then meditate on that question. So I'll repeat the question. Yes, somebody is asking me, can I write this question in the chat? Yes, I can. Okay, so I'm going to do it right now. How do you imagine long-term stewardship of the land? How can we be good caretakers of the land? All right, so you can copy the question if you want, but the chat will be visible. So let's do the breakout rooms. How many people are we? 20? 5. You should see a message popping up and then you join the room. So those who did not join the room, if there is a reason you don't want to join, that's absolutely fine. So you can just stay in the main room if you want just to listen. Alternatively, somebody wants to stay in the main room. Because I'm aware some people just want to stay and listen because they're driving or they're somewhere else. Okay, that's fine. And I'm going to join room number 5.
Anybody else joining? Oh, Evgenia,
Yes,
hello.
it's me. Hello.
Hi. We were just trying to figure out, first of all, which language we're going to use.
English,
I think English would be nice.
Otherwise, we have to speak Russian for Evgenia.
No.
No,
English
but Evgenia, you speak Portuguese, right?
Yeah, I speak Portuguese. What about you, Rogili?
It's getting there, yeah. Eu percebo muito.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alexandra, are you okay? Are you okay speaking in English?
Yeah.
Okay. Ivan, you don't mind?
That's great.
Okay.
And is there anybody else joining us?
No,
Or-
that's it.
okay.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I don't need to introduce myself, but I would love to hear everybody else.
All right. Well, Ivan, Alessandra, my name is Rogile, and I'm from Lithuania originally. I've lived in London for half my life, and that's where I met the wonderful Evgenia through also really creative, amazing friends. And yeah, I'm always inspired by Evgenia's work and art and how she brings people together. And of course, simultaneously, I've always tried to, I don't know, improve step by step what kind of impact I have on the planet. So it's a work in progress, right? And I do it every day, and I know I have a long way to go, but for me it's a very, very important part of my life, even if it's slow, but to find a way, to leave this planet, or to make a more of a positive impact than I'm taking, because it's, well, I'm sure we're all feeling the same. It's difficult knowing how much we're consuming constantly and taking and well, destroying and all those negative things, and we have to be very creative to turn it into a positive. So that's me, and I feel like Eternal Forest is something very, very, how shall I put it, practical. We're not just talking, right? We're not just talking about concepts and ideas. Like, I feel like Evgenia and her team and this project is actually taking action and doing things, which I find amazing. So that's why I'm here. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Rogili.
Nice to meet you as well. I already knew Ivan and met Eugenia a little bit, saw her on the Encounter for the Forest in 2019. I'm also from Lisbon. I'm studying right now in university. And I've been on a quest for meaning and answers in my life, as I'm kind of in this age. For some time, like since the beginning of high school, I've been drawn a bit too much out of myself recently and exploring too much. And now I'm coming back and trying to center myself and find my ground, my stability and balance, which is getting there. So now I'm more like focused on meditation, and I have a big interest in meditation and Buddhism, but as well in community development and eco villages and reforestation and permaculture. And in the future, I envision myself as being a monk and like developing a meditation retreat here in Portugal. So these ideas interest me, and I want to learn how to make this a reality and contribute in what I can for it.
Amazing.
Thank you. Well, I want to be like Alexandre when I grow up. Yeah, but I like Alexandre very much, especially when he's mowing my lawn, which he does every now and then. I live in Tomar, and I'm 57 years old. I guess I'm sort of retired, although I don't feel like I'm retired because I work just the same way I worked all my life, but I don't work for anyone. I try to spend as much of my time as I can gardening, and the rest of the time I don't even try. The universe seems to have me connecting people and trying to weave, as someone called it. I'm a weaver. I bring things together and trying to catalyze projects that interest me. For a long time, I've been involved in trying to introduce mindfulness into education, and now I'm trying to set up a land conservation trust in Portugal.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you both.
So the question is, how does one take care? Is that right? How does one take care of the land? How does one look after it in some way? Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like, Ivan, you have probably so far the most practical experience in that.
No, don't think so. I think all of us in every moment we are probably faced with choices like, it's an expression that comes out of everything we do. It's like taking care of people, taking care of animals, taking care of nature. It's either something you choose to be conscious of wanting to do, and then you just do it whenever you can. Maybe sometimes you fail to do it. You didn't pick up the paper that someone else threw on the floor, and you think, oh, should I pick that up? Oh yeah, I'll go back and pick it up. Or no, I don't have time today. I won't pick that one. I'll pick the next one up. But we all, I think, have that in us. No.
That's a nice point, actually, because it's interesting, having lived in the cities most of my life, and now being based in a capital city. I immediately thought, well, what can I do here? I'm not really in the land, but I am actually, like you're saying. It's just taking care of your environment, of your area. It still counts, and it's still important. Just because you're surrounded by concrete doesn't mean you're not needing to look after it, right?
Right. And for me, that's also the goal, is how to contribute for this reconnection while being in the city. And I think it's possible that there are, well, some city gardens and community projects. Yeah, but as well, my focus and my perspective is how we can make it come from inside as well. So bringing in the spirituality and like Ivan said, with everything we do, starting from ourselves and then expanding to how we treat people, how we take care of ourselves, and how we connect with nature and live with it. Yeah, and from what I've learned or felt during my experiences with Buddhism and gardening projects is that it doesn't work if there is no inner cohesion or regeneration that's happening from inside first. And like we can be work, but in can be made through our hands, our physical effort. But if there is a better connection, together better, and even in an energetic level, things just in a way, and like it's much more effective. I cannot, I don't.
That's a shame that we're losing.
Yeah.
Alexandre.
1 second here.
Oh, you're back.
We lost you for a bit.
Oh, sorry.
It's
Maybe
probably the connection. It breaks up a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, because like for example, in Buddhism, there's a lot of, well, it depends on the traditions as well, but there's the concept of merit, and that our good energy influences the environment around us. And one of the reasons for humanity being facing so many problems right now is because of our lack of inner morality and integrity and connection with the divine within us. And so we create a lot of problems and destruction in the world. And it's the inner that's affecting the outer, not the outer that affects the inner mostly. So it needs to come, if we want to change things, it needs to start from the inside, as it was the beginning as well. And
I like that.
Yeah. And so we can do all of this outer work, but if we are not changing inside, we're going to continue to create the same problems and trying to fix them from the outside, and it's not going to work, and it's going to be a lot of effort. So in my personal life, I've not been focusing so much right now on reforestation, but more on deepening my practice and getting to the essence of my purpose and my calling, which I feel is like to connect more students for this cause and to creating community and everything. Because if we can access that and connect more with each other and overcome our lack of inspiration, lack of motivation to act in the world in a positive way, if we can't overcome that, it doesn't matter if we want to go at it just by ourselves alone, which is also necessary, and we have to set the example, but we also need to maybe make people shift in their lives in the cities, for example, where most of the people are, and open a path for them to reconnect with nature.
Thank you.
Something like that.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. That's definitely also giving me some food for thought and some ideas, because I've also been trying to start meditating more. I know it's now very, very popular, but it's growing, I think. but I like that idea that you can do kind of internal and personal work together, as well as taking care of the outside. It doesn't have to be separate, like the self and let's say nature and the planet. It's common work, actually, one and the same. So yeah, thanks very much for that idea.
Mm-hmm. Are we
Christine?
supposed just to share amongst ourselves like the answers to the question, or do you have any contributions as well?
Yeah, I actually, it's interesting. I was listening to you, and something I remembered, which is really interesting, because sometimes we forget certain things we think at certain point, but because I tend to put a lot of things in like Google Docs and even some ideas, even some things that then I just discard and move on. There was this period more than 1 year ago, already 1.5, before I actually sat down and write the proposal for Eternal Forest Sanctuary, before that idea came on paper. It was more like 6 months when I was thinking that Eternal Forest is becoming internal forest. And this is what you just shared. It's very much in line. So I felt that necessity, going away from, making the films and going around talking to people, to really internalizing it and finding ways of going deeper and finding ways for myself, first of all, to practice what I'm kind of trying to get people to imagine, to do, to be, how to be. And it became internal forest for myself. And at some point that stayed. And so I have it written, and I have like ideas written down. And then it transformed into Eternal Forest Sanctuary, because I actually really didn't want to change the name. So that idea, then, that vision actually is inviting myself and everybody else to step into that space and to co-create with nature, to listen deeper to ourselves, to nature, to forest, to all the beings, and also to really see that we are no different or no separate from them. And also we are not separate from ourselves, which is in the first place. So I think I resonate very strongly to that. And I think for me, maybe it partially answers my question: what does it mean to be a good caretaker of the land? Is to be good caretaker of myself, of my own body, my own psyche, my own mental state. Because if I am at peace with myself, then I can hear the dream of the land. I can listen deeply, and perhaps I hear better as well. And then I agree with you, Alexandra, as well, that it's not just about planting trees. Actually, it's more like the ultimate act, the planting. The question is, how do we plant, and where do we start from, and why? What is the motivation? Why do we actually go and plant these trees? The motivations can be many. So, yeah. But yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. Our time is up together. I'm going to return to the main room. I'm gonna bring everybody in, and maybe, I don't know, maybe one of you can share something that we explored here a little bit, if you don't mind.
All right.
Okay, I see you back in the main space. I'm just waiting for everybody to come back in. Okay. So I hope that you enjoyed speaking to each other and meeting hopefully some new people or meeting some old friends. And just maybe quite briefly, I don't know, I think we had 5 rooms. Maybe if we could hear from each collective, each little community, what came up for you, what was the highlight of your conversation, what was highlight of your encounter. Somebody would like to share? Somebody would like to share from our room.
Yes, sure. I think Alexander from our room spoke probably the most, but it was wonderful to meet everyone. And so Ivan was a great connector all his life, and Alexander is starting out, but made some really interesting points about connecting meditation and Buddhism with the ideas of reforestation and eternal forest. So actually going in and firstly taking care of yourself. And when you're at peace with yourself, then you can take care of the land, and it's not separate works, but one and the same. I don't know, maybe Alexander, you would like to give more detail, but yeah, that was really, really inspiring for me.
Thank you, Rugile.
Yeah, I guess that was about it. And then Eugenia confirmed that she already had that column. She said a quote that she's like writes her ideas, and one of the quotes that were coming up was eternal forest is becoming internal forest. So already she had this calling of going within and centering ourselves in our true calling, and taking care of the land by first taking care of ourselves and our relationships and everything around us. And also, like, what is then from this inner work what can be an authentic motivation to planting trees, to taking care of the environment, regenerating.
Thanks so much for sharing. Someone else would love to share a little? I would love to hear some more amazing ideas from you. What were the insights? Yes, Ben, please.
Yeah, I think just echoing, I think we sort of arrived at that, the idea that it's the internal. We were thinking very much about this dichotomy of having us and it, or us and nature, and that somehow that needs dissolving in the talking, in the being, in the doing, and that then there's this kind of thing between the systems of nature and how we are part of that as animals. And then there was an idea that really came out of it, is that it is again the individual, that the individual comes to the peace, to the understanding, to the experience. I think Kai was taking us there very nicely in what you were saying about having our people, our own connection, and it's very much a physical thing. It's very much about something very physical. And I think we ended on, there was then we were thinking, what was it? We need us to need it. So we need humans to figure out why they need the forest. I mean, why they need the trees. Something like that. I don't know if anybody else wants to input. Thank you.
Thank you, Pen. Someone else would like to contribute?
Well, just to maybe continue, because I was in the same group. I think sustainability for me means, can I see myself in the future? Am I going to be there? But then it also means, can I see beyond that? Can I see that I'm not going to be there anymore? And can I plan with that in mind? We have to think longer than the lifespan of our human bodies. That's what it means to think in deep time, to think in the time of the earth, not just in what we can imagine, because our imagination is incredibly limited. And the other question is, of course, the question of space, and that's where our own bodies are really important. But we have to realize that the space we occupy there's a lot more that is alive in it than our own bodies. But again, we have to sustain our own bodies in order to be able to even be here or do anything. And that's the human nature. That's really important, because nature's still going to be here when we're gone. It's about us and what we do at the end of the day for each other.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you so much for sharing. So maybe one more person, if somebody is willing, before we move to hear a wonderful story today.
Yeah, maybe just something, because it goes in a different direction of what was said here, I think. So I talked with HPS. Sorry, what was your name?
Henrique Pereira-dos.
Okay. We were only two, so I don't know how many persons were in the other rooms. And we were quite practical, or at least Henrique started to say a long-term stewardship, that it has to start by owning the land. And I mean, it's a very practical thing, independently of all other levels and dimensions of how to think using that land. If you don't have really access and a guarantee to use it on a long term, then you don't. You don't advance too much. So I mean, that's also the reason I'm in this talk, because I really would like. I already learned a bit, and I would like to learn more about this model, which I suppose is going to be presented today, of how we can own the land in a way, in a sense of that it's a commons. How do you say it? That it belongs to everyone. Well, to nobody, some entity which represents a bunch of people, and that can use that land then on a long term, then based on all the concepts of how to use the land in a sustainable way and regenerative way, or how you say it. So, but I think this very practical thing is who owns the land, and and that this property has to be in the hands of someone or some institution to allow people to go on it in our quite practical worlds, which is ruled by laws and so on. So it's a completely different approach. We thought they're less spiritual, but it's also a part of it.
Patrick, thank you so much. I think it's, as you said, it's different, but it's not disconnected. So it's kind of, they are really closely actually related. And I think we're going to talk about it. This is exactly what we're going to talk about now. So maybe without further delay, I would love to introduce our guests today. As I already mentioned, and I'm sure you read a few bits in the event, Terra Agora is a newly forming foundation. It's emerging currently in Portugal. And here today we have 3 people who represent this foundation. Filipa Simões, Claudian Doboş, and Ivan Sellers. And on the screen, you see Filipa and Claudian sharing the screen. Although it just says Claudian, there are 2 people. And if I'm correct, they are currently in Aurora community in Romania. That's correct, right? and Ivan is currently in Portugal, in Tomar. I'm sure you've read all about them. I don't want to spend maybe too much time reading kind of all of their background history. Is a lot of information there. You could also go back and check if you're interested. But some things I would like to mention is that first of all, Filipa and Claudian are also, so apart from the fact that they're based in Romania, in a really beautiful place, in a place that is also being deforested at very high rates. I have been following their work about Aurora community, but also about projects called Terra Livre. And if you haven't checked the project yet, you should go online after this and have a look. It's the project that creates a link between communities and land, and to be able, for the communities to be able to keep the land and to reforest that land. And they've done lots of successful fundraising campaigns by basically purchasing the land and offering the land to the community so the land can be protected. And this, I understand this work continues, and it's very closely related to the idea and to the emergence of the foundation of Terra Agora, which is coming to Portugal with similar purpose, but also I understand it's like an expanded version of what they've already been doing and what Ivan is facilitating here, with also a whole collective of really amazing people who are not here with us today. But Foundation, of course, has a lot of people who are consultants and curators who are associated with this foundation. I am also hopefully will be helping with the foundation in terms of artistic implementation and some ideas and creativity. And so I'm really excited that this is really happening right now. And I just wanted to say that I'm fully supporting this beautiful and brilliant work, which is very, very necessary. And maybe I would love to ask them to give us like a really super brief overview of where they're at right now, maybe in 3-5 minutes before I start asking some questions, which I prepared. There's a lot of questions, and then I will leave some time for all of you to ask questions if you still have them after I've asked mine. So I would love to ask Ivan to maybe give us a little bit of introduction about the idea of the foundation, and in essence, what is it really that we are looking at?
Thank you, Evgenia. It's so nice to listen to you. You have such a lovely energy. It's hard not to be contaminated by your energy. So we really owe a debt to Filipa, because from the very beginning, before I even came to the picture, she had this idea of freeing the land, which I think is the essence, or it's not the only thing, but it's a very important thing, because in our legal system, as Henrique was saying, we have to buy the slave to free the slave. You know, we have to. We don't have to. I mean, throughout history, people have done wonderful things. You know, the missionaries, the Jesuit missionaries, went to Paraguay and they brought medicine, and the populations came. But then the slave traders came and they took all these people away in slavery. And Enrique, you know, says, look, I don't want to go and put all my effort into taking care of the land, and then somebody comes and says, well, get off now, I'm going to put the bulldozer and plant all these trees. So owning the land in a way is, as he says, important for land conservation. And so we have chosen in Portugal to create a foundation. It seems to us, after studying many different cases, that it's the most solid. We were looking for something that over time would present the least chance of conflicts between people, affecting the overall mission of our intention. And our intention is really to leave things better than when we receive them. So there's not much to conserve in Portugal. Most of the forest in Portugal has been cut down, has been used, has been exploited. So there is a huge need for regeneration, even more so because Portugal is one of the countries that is very much affected in the coming years by the climate change. South of the Tejo River, the Alentejo region, and north even in Idania and other areas of the upper Alentejo are under already severe water shortages. And what we are doing essentially is planting water. So we are today, we have found a donor who's prepared to give the money, because the foundation needs a minimum amount of money. He also is about to purchase 1,600 hectares of land and donate those as part of the creation of the foundation. And we're simply waiting for the legal paperwork to be finalized for that in order to go ahead. The statutes are written, the board members are chosen, the executive team, which will be led by Claudian, has been assembled. Filipa is the president of the board of administration, and I have assembled a group of curators or trustees, as you might call them, as part of a board of curators whose job it is to almost be the soul of the foundation, to make sure that the executive and the board of administration stick to the intention that is set out from the beginning. So that's where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. So I would love to go to Filipa and ask her, what do you feel are the needs that Terra Agora is going to meet throughout its activities and throughout the process?
Well, there are many needs, and Ivan mentioned some, like regeneration. There's a great need of the regenerative work in Portugal. Also, to one need that I find is to, there are a lot of fragmentation, right? There are very small parcels, one parcel here and there. How can we bring them together, right? I find this very important. But for me, the most important need is, the greatest need is, how do we preserve the land for many generations? Not just this generation, not just for, during my lifetime, but how can we perpetuate this care? And I just found out that I can do it better if I don't own the land, right? If I'm not the owner. It doesn't mean that as an owner, I'm not a good caretaker, or I'm not a good guardian. No, but I don't know what will happen to that land that I own when I die. What will happen to it? So this has been in my mind for a long time, and it was in my mind for a long time. How can we continue the protection of the land? So for me personally, this is what it's one of the needs, to take care of the land for many generations, for a very long term.
Thank you so much. It's interesting that you say that it's not because I'm the owner of the land that not necessarily I can't take care of the land. It's just that I don't necessarily know what's going to happen to the land when I go, right? And what kind of decisions my followers will make about that land, what they would like to do on that. I'm seeing lots of examples around where somebody just shared that with me. The children of the owners, of the current owners of the land, are waiting until literally their parents will stop working with the land and they can finally regenerate monocultures that the parents have been growing. And they are currently talking to their parents. They're preparing them for that slowly, so that there is no conflict, but there is this, taking over and continuing to work with the land. It's just in a different way. So actually, I wanted to ask Claudian a question. I don't know if he's still there.
He's here.
He's here. Okay, he's listening. So I would love to ask you, Claudian, to give us some examples of what type of projects which Terra Agora would be looking for, and that you will be choosing. Are they forest regeneration? Are they ethical agroecological projects? Are they communities? Just give us kind of a scope of different varieties of projects so we could kind of draw this picture in our minds.
Before that, just to say that we have a puppy here and she doesn't feel well, so I have to really sometimes I'm standing up just to take some care of her. And I also want to welcome also Alexandra, just to say that she's also part of the curators board. And this would just
and Evgenia,
of course, and just to say that this also shows the diversity of the age in our curators board. Relating to the project, so it depends on what we are talking about. The project that the foundation would be. We do not hear you well, says Ivan Sellers. Okay, so you hear me well. Better now? I'm just still speaking quite loud. Okay. So it depends if we are looking from the perspective of receiving the land, or from the perspective of giving the land in use. So I'm not really clear on the question, Evgenia.
Maybe the perspective of what kind of projects can be done on the land after you receive the land in the foundation.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, there's some criteria when we're looking to whom we're going to give the land in guardianship, right? So I would say the first criteria is that group of people. First is a group of people. Second is that group of people is organized in a form of any kind of legal organization, because there's a contract that has to be celebrated in between the foundation and let's say the guardian entity, right? So for that to happen, it has to be a legal form. Then they have to bring on, let's say, a mature project. What kind of project that has, let's say, a vision that embodies or the dimension of ecology, but also the dimension of economical sustainability. So there's no thriving in a project if there is not a thriving community. So that has to happen, and that economical dimension has to be present. And we will look, of course, to projects. They are regenerative. And at least I would say having the dimension of conservation.
Thank you so much. I guess I'm quite sure there's already quite a few people writing to you and approaching you, so you probably already start forming quite a long list of projects, which is super exciting.
There is a list indeed, and people are approaching us for different reasons, also to donate their property to the foundation,
Fantastic.
but also to propose themselves as guardians. So we have both dynamics.
Great. That's really great to hear that. So I would love to ask Ivan a question. Ivan, are you with us? My question is, what are the successful examples internationally of similar foundations? If you could give us a couple of examples on that.
Well, essentially what we are as a land conservation trust is sort of the heading of you know, what we're doing. And land conservation has been going on as in this form for about 150 years, mainly in the United States and in England and the Anglo-Saxon countries, and in a slightly different way than we are proposing to do it. It mainly is through what's called easements, which are tax structures where somebody gets certain tax advantages for putting their land into a sort of trusteeship, and the trusteeship then takes care of the maintaining, restoring the land. This is primarily the American US model. So there's many organizations in the United States. One we spoke to has 80 people just working in a department to raise money to buy more land and to do conservation. Imagine the size of that, 80 people just raising money. We are part of the International Land Conservation Network, which regularly hosts meetings with others in Australia, in New Zealand, in Spain, in Germany, in other areas. So we're constantly in touch. There is one foundation which we were quite influenced by, and at the beginning, which is the a foundation in Switzerland, who has been doing this for about 15 years. They now have about 200 million Swiss francs of assets under management. They focus mainly on urban properties, because in Switzerland it's not so easy to get rural properties, but they actually have 2 properties in Portugal through a sister foundation. It was started by 4 people who each put 15,000 Swiss francs together in a pool to buy the first property. And they look at 3 different areas, which are the same 3 we look. They look at forest areas, they look at agricultural areas, and they look at urban areas. So urban might be an apartment building or an old market that comes up for sale, where they want to save and conserve the architecture. They're able to provide rents at lower rates because they only have to maintain the property. They don't have to provide capital gains or returns to their investors. So that provides a social housing. And in the areas of forest, it's conservation and regeneration, and the area of agriculture, it's agriculture without using chemicals and trying to practice biologically sensitive practices. In Germany, and Austria, there are similar organizations. In France, in England, and we will be the first foundation doing this in Portugal, but Enrique Pereira, who's here in the meeting with us, has valiantly been doing this for many years with much less money, and we really take our hat off to the efforts that he's been managing to do up till now on a shoestring, I would say. And by the way, he's raising money for a project right now, and he's at 15,000 euros, and he needs to get to 18,000 euros. So afterwards, if you're interested to contribute to his crowdfunding, it's Montis, MONTIS. You should go there and make a small donation to help his efforts.
Thank you, Ivan. Yes, we are almost there, but still we need some more donation.
Enrique, could you please maybe put in the chat the link for the campaign so that people can copy and
yes, of course.
have a look. Thank you so much. Ivan, thank you so much for explaining that. I'd love to ask Filipa a question of very specifically about a successfully protected forest by a community anywhere in the world, maybe based on a similar approach to Terra Agora. If you could give us an example that we could kind of connect with, what would it mean for a forest to be protected by a community?
Mm-hmm. I did a fundraiser. I didn't do it, but I contributed to a fundraising campaign to acquire 3,800 hectares of virgin forest in Ecuador. This was about 2 years ago, actually 3 years ago, and the campaign took about 2 years to finish. It was successful, and this forest is now owned by a foundation in Ecuador, and is cared by a community. It's called Amazanga Center, and it's a local community project for tourism. Also, they receive many visitors, and it's actually a beautiful project. I never visited, but from the pictures and the videos, it's just beautiful. And this, for me, it's quite a successful case. With 3,800 hectares, it's for me quite extraordinary. It was acquired by because there was the support of a Canadian fund that helped to support this acquiring this land. And in a very smaller, a much smaller scale, it's where we live, it's where I live. So Aurora community is now taking care of 25 hectares of land and forest, and the land doesn't belong to us. So the land belongs to an organization. Aurora community is another organization, and the land belongs to Terra Livre, which is the organization that owns and takes care of the land. So we, as a community, we are the guardians, we are the stewards of this forest, this land. We regenerate. We had a campaign last year for a crowdfunding campaign to bring more diversity to our forest, which is it's not only forest, it also has pasture. So we want to restore this forest, to regenerate this forest. It's quite fragmented, so we want to bring in more trees so we can build more wildlife corridors. So this work of regeneration, it started this year. It started last year with the crowdfunding campaign. It was a success, thankfully. And this year we started to plant many trees. Many of them we won't see them fully mature, like oaks, but I'm sure they will benefit many beings in the future.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Filipa, could you please write to us in the chat the links to the projects that you mentioned while we continue the conversation? Thank you. This is truly inspiring. I would love to ask Ivan next question. And the question is, which obstacles in social, economic, and political fabric do you see that we need to overcome as a society to make this particular project work in the long term?
Well, when I talked about this idea, I was at a Vipassana meditation together with Filipa and with another friend of ours. And I talked about it, the idea to him, and he said, that's never going to happen. Nobody in Portugal is ever going to give you any land, so forget it. And a few months later, somebody came and said, I'll give you this land, and now there's another one and another one. So it's one of those things where I think you have to believe that it's going to work, because you'll find many people that say it's not, and then it just does. And I think that our involvement in this comes from a very deep spiritual place, a sort of a sense that we are serving nature, serving life, serving the universe, serving God, whatever you want to put it. And so there's not a lot of questioning for us of what we're doing. Maybe that's right or wrong. We have some challenges. An economic challenge, for instance, is we get a donation of land. We get a group of very talented people who want to be the guardians, but they have no money. And a project needs money. It needs money for building roads, for building houses, for building energy, for buying seeds, for buying tools. So how do we resolve that? And one of the things we've begun to look is specifically, several members of the foundation are looking right now at how can we bring different forms of funding to serve these guardians. There's a organization called Common Lands, which we admire and follow very closely. And they talk about 4 returns of a social return, an economic return, an environmental return, and a return which you could call a spiritual return, which is a return of hope to the community, a hope in life, a hope in the, things are finally working in a way that people feel there's a harmony. And I think we share that sort of a framework. How can we in these projects generate some type of return for the investors? Doesn't have to be the 7 or 8% they get in the stock market. It might be 0.5% or 2%, or it might be some sort of other form of return. And then how can we involve the local communities so that they feel that they're getting a return? Their sons and daughters can work in these projects, and they can feel proud, and they can have access, and there's a human return in that way. And obviously the ecological return would be that there's more water, and there's more wildlife, and there's more trees, and there's more biodiversity. So each of these things can be measured, but we expect lots of challenges. But just like everything is a challenge in life, it was a challenge to be born, it was a challenge to be educated, it's a challenge to work, it's a challenge to die. So that's not something that for the time being is making us in any way uncomfortable.
Thank you. Looks like we love challenges. My next question is to Filipa. What do you feel is the role of guardian or a group of guardians in taking care of the land?
Well, there are many roles, and I think we all can perform roles and tasks, but I would say that it's more the qualities. What are the qualities that we have, if we want to perform this role or this task better, right? And the qualities are, I like to think that one of the qualities is the observer, is to observe more, to learn how to observe. We have this tendency to touch and to grab things, and we want to hold this and that. And what if we are more the observers? Going to the forest and observe how the water flows, how the wind blows, how, what are the sounds, what are the inhabitants of this forest, were they introduced later, are they original from there? So for me, this is very important. And the less we interact, the better. Right? We don't have to interact too much with the ecosystem. If it's a working ecosystem, if it's a healthy forest, we don't have to do much. We don't have to clean it. A forest just is there. It works, by itself, and in a very balanced way. So I like to think, of these qualities, of a guardian who doesn't see himself or herself as the owner, who it's just the steward, it's just the guardian, it's just part of this, big ecosystem. We are not part of it, we are it. We are not part of the forest, we are the forest also. And yes, it's important. I think if we don't have these qualities, it's important that we develop them if we want to be good guardians, if we want to be good stewards.
Thank you so much. Beautiful the way you put it. I feel that deep listening, that deep observation is really necessary, especially when we talk about a possibility of regenerating a particular land, or planting some trees, or intervening somehow with the ecosystem. I feel like I thought about it quite a lot. I thought, how would I approach? Like, if I had to create a sanctuary, an eternal forest sanctuary, how would I even start? And then I was meditating in some land in Korush, where actually the first idea was developed first time, and the land was telling me, well, you just have to spend a lot of time here and to dream and to really stay with me and to come back again and again. And the people you want to bring as a team, as a circle, you need to let them do exactly the same thing, and you need to develop that practice. And it has to be a regular practice of really tuning in before intervening. You must know what the dream of the land is. And if you don't know what is the purpose of that place, what the land wants to become, then probably the project won't even go forward. And when I heard that from different, actually already different places where I kind of tried to tune in, I think it was quite enlightening for me, because also it puts less pressure on us humans, like we know everything, and gives us more possibility to be guided by the land herself, by the future forest, or by the existing forest, or by the forest in transition, because a lot of places are in transition. They are semi-abandoned agricultural lands, and they're going already towards the forest, and they're already doing their own work, and we're just there to support. So I resonate a lot with what you said, and I just wanted to mention that one of the conversations in the future will be on deep listening. So we will try to invite people to actually sink even deeper into that space and try to learn what is deep listening and how could we do that in nature and with ourselves. I would love to continue and to ask Claudian next question. It's quite a tricky one, maybe. How would you measure the success of Terra Agora in achieving the goals that you put in front of you? What is
Well,
success?
I would say the first measurable one would be that this foundation project is approved by the government. You know, if you're not aware, in Portugal, the approval of foundation is a political decision. So we still cross fingers that we get there. Then regarding with the projects, I would say that they are really thrivable. You know, like it doesn't matter if it's one or there are many. They are really thrivable projects. You know, and I would focus maybe in the first one, this big one, 1,600 something hectares, central east Portugal. It's that we managed to support there the inflection, let's say, of a tribal community of guardians and stewards. That's the first one. Then I would say, you know, then we are an organization, and any organization is also run by numbers. That would be the number of the projects, the number of donations, the number of all that stories that we have to show to our investors in the world around. But I would say my main indicator would be that first that this foundation serves as an example and an inspiration in Portugal. So brings more than having more projects and more committees and more so on, but makes it land this idea that, you know, we can be stewards and caretakers of something that it's not mine. And that's a big shift, you know, like in the mind of the people, and not only Portuguese people, but everyone. And the second indicator would be that this idea or this organization is replicated wherever in the world, but particularly in Portugal. So it's not a focus that this foundation would be the on and only in Portugal, but someone in time, because there are many projects, other foundations are going to come to life, inspired by this one, supported by this one, doesn't really matter. That's what I have to say. I don't know if you, Ivan or Filipa, want to complete this.
Well, I think, you know, you can have measures. You know, you can count how many birds there are. You can count how many trees there are. You can count how much water there is, and so forth. But I think it's very important as well that the communities, what we call guardians, that you can count the health or the well-being of these communities, because many projects, or probably all projects that involve human beings, generally run into problems, whether it's families or villages or nations, because of the inability of people to live harmoniously or live in a way that conflicts can be resolved. So I would hope we would see that taking out the ownership of land contributes to, especially the way we would like to see the guardians function, contributes also to healthy guardian communities and healthy communities around these properties.
Thank you. I feel like we cannot separate these two things, and that health of the community, what the health and the happiness of the community that lives in close proximity to, or lives on the land, or lives to close proximity to the land, while helping to support the land and while helping to support biodiversity, I feel there is direct link, and I haven't even tapped into that research, the connection between biodiversity and happiness, but I believe there would be some, and I'm really liking where this thinking is going towards, because Of course, there are scientific indices and there is lots of ways to measure things. And there is this whole ecosystem services and how can we put value on the forest. And there is a big discussion about that, but there is also a separate discussion going on about what is this intangible values of the forest or intangible values of a healthy ecosystem. And we've had this conversation recently during my exhibition. And it seems like it's a really, really important conversation to hold, because this is something we can't really put the monetary value on. But then there are more and more places in the world that are putting this into perspective and saying, well, the health of the people and the happiness of the people is really the most important thing for them to be able to continue living in healthy, happy communities and actually contributing positively to the living earth. So I like that both are present, and I'm really curious to see how this will develop and how this will be communicated, because I'm also finding my own ways to communicate that in my own project, and I think it's really important, yes, to have that perspective, both of the kind of more tangible scientific, but also intangible kind of measures. Ivan, I wanted to ask you another question. If you could clarify for us what as an organization you feel, what are the priority areas for the foundation in terms of investment, in terms of taking the projects further? What do you agree together? What is the urgent areas? What is the urgency currently? And which are the projects that would kind of probably get priority in terms of entering as guardians?
Well, the first project, we're just since it's Thanksgiving weekend, we're just really thankful that we have a first project, so that we found a first donor. So I think if they had been in the bottom, the middle, or the top, we would have been equally thankful. But it just happens to be in a beautiful area that has a community that's already taking lots of initiatives, with forward-seeing president of the camera and so forth. So, and with lots of people linked to the project that are very energetic, visionary. So we're really very grateful for that. And then a second project has emerged, and third, which again, you know, if we can just sit here and people come and throw projects at us, it's lovely. It's a sort of, you know, much better than we thought. But from another perspective, you know, if we have the time and if we have the money, because right now we are all volunteers and our resources are limited, but obviously we could go around Portugal and do a sort of analysis and say, what are the priorities? You know, if we have, you know, 50 million euros to spend, what's the way to spend that 50 million euros that, I don't know, contributes most significantly to regeneration? But then what people in regeneration tell you is, you're regenerating what? If you're looking at helping animals, you know, the rewilding effort, then you'd have maybe one perspective. There's a huge effort in the east of Portugal, which is looking for support, which we could try and work with just to do the rewilding. If you're looking at generating water, there's a number of different projects that would attract your attention. If you're looking at protecting particular kinds of trees in particular areas. So I think the risk is that, you know, there's one starts to go, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and then you get completely confused. So while we recognize that there are many urgent things, I think we're just going to see what happens and take it one step at a time. Even the property we're now looking at, where there is a initial group of guardians, we said to them, look, we're in no hurry. Take 3 years, take 4 years, take 5 years to develop your vision. you know, and once you developed your vision, then let's go and implement it. But we're not in a hurry. We should be in a hurry in some sense that, you know, the television keeps making us all afraid that we have to do something within 10 years or 5 years or 20 years, or we're all gonna turn into, I don't know, stardust. But yeah, we're not thinking that way. We're just taking one step at a time.
Thank you. Claudian, I have a question for you. Another super tricky question. Seems like all the tricky questions are for you today. How do you feel Terra Agora will be making an impact in 100 years' time? So if we could look in 2121, how do you see the image? What's happening then?
I mean, that's related with the previous question on the measurement of the success of the project. And for me, there's an effective one of the work that is done, you know, like as you could say, like the number of the project, the quantity of the trees that someone can take shade of, you know, like that kind of numbers, right? So, you know, you can relate that with climate change, you can relate that with livability of the place, you can relate with many elements. But for me, the key one has to be, it's more a political and a mindset one. You know, how this is landing in the mindsets of the people from now to 50, 100 years, a different picture of relation of how me as an individual and we as a community, as a group of people, relate with the, let's say, the forest or the land or the diversity that lives on it. And that would be the major contribution. That would be for me the major change, I would say, from now to 50 or 100 years. And of course, there's I would say, for me, there is a bonus, you know, like there's a bonus, there's the oak tree, you know, growing. There are more birds around. There's more biodiversity for future generation of humans to enjoy, right? And to live with. But main of it has to do with the mindset, you know, the mindset and attitude. And that's why we are here. And I would say there's another dimension that has to do like how we change the level of the conversation and the quality of the conversation. You know, this is a foundation attention. Right? So that's what I say about it.
Thank you. Thank you. I do feel like culture is the hardest thing to change and the slowest thing to change. So changing culture comes quite slowly. And it leads me to maybe last question from my side to Filipa. How do you feel art can contribute in this change and in regeneration process?
Good question. I love the question. I'm a little suspicious because I'm a designer, so I also studied art and I love art, and I think it's really, really important. I have this wish. I dream many times that you know, more artists would be more involved in activism, because we need the creativity. We are going through such tricky times and difficult times that we really need to be creative, and we need everybody to, if we really want to, you know, bring solutions. And nature is very complex, and I don't think we need linear solutions. So I remember now this quote of I think it was Einstein. He said that we cannot solve the you know, the problems, our problems, within the same mindset that created them. You know, so we really need to bring new solutions out of the box And I really see the art. I really see all the artists, musicians, sculptors, filmmakers, to be involved, to get involved in this work of healing our earth, our planet, our home, and work together. Sometimes I try to imagine how it would be having all these creative people working together with scientists and the researchers, and it brings me quite a lot of joy when I think about this, and I think we would be quite successful in finding really, really creative solutions and beautiful ones.
Thank you so much. I really love your vision, and I think I share it. And I think Eternal Forest partially is trying to create that platform for artists to enter and to be able to contribute in a different way. And actually, as I'm saying that, I'm also going to later put in the chat that the next Eternal Forest conversation is with a forest artist based in Portugal. We've been following each other's work for 2-3 years. He's been looking at what I'm doing, trying to see if I'm going to drop Eternal Forest or not. And then we started talking finally. So that's going to happen on the 17th of December. I'm going to write it down. But I don't have more questions, but I would love to open the floor for questions from everybody else and see what else is hovering in the space, what things need to be asked. So if you have a question, just unmute your microphone and go for it.
If no one else starts, I can ask something super simple. Obviously, fascinating work, and Evgenia, thank you so much for introducing these amazing organizations to us and all the projects that have been mentioned. It's very, very promising. My question is because I've been looking at the executive summary at the website of Terra Agora, and it talks about the challenge of short-term vision. So fighting that, and I think Ivan, you talked about we have time. It doesn't need to be 5 years. It can, projects can take as long as they need. So just perhaps what was the actual idea behind the title of the foundation? Because perhaps not everyone knows. From what I know, Terra Agora means Earth now. So how did that come about when we're talking about, right now, but also looking really long term? Thank you.
I'm going to let Filipa answer that one.
Well, Claudian, would you like to? Well, actually, we had quite a lot of, we went around the name for a long time, and some of us.
The name was free, like we searched for the name.
No, so I sometimes call it Terra Agora, and Agora was was the place where the Greeks would gather. So this was how was the original thought, right? And when we registered, it came out without the accent, what, how do you call it? Yeah, so we start calling it Terra Agora, which means Terra now. And but which also makes sense to us. I think we need solutions now. We need to start working now. We need, to get together now, not tomorrow. We need to start acting now. If we want to see the results we want to see tomorrow. So the now for me, it's very important. We don't live in the past. We don't live in the future. I don't know. We can predict many things for the future, but it's just prediction. We don't know for sure. So we really have to live in the now, in the present. That's the most precious thing. That's the real thing, the only real thing. It's the present moment, not the past, not the future. So when I started to call it Terra now, because it makes a lot of sense to me, and it reminds me of this now. Be here, be here now, not in the future. Come back to the earth, put your feet, ground yourself on the earth, yes, it reminds me a lot of that when I hear the name, the now. Agora. But some people call it Agora. Claudian still calls it Agora. And I go like, no, it's Agora, now.
Thank you very much. Unexpected story, but I'm glad I asked.
Now we know there is a double meaning. We can interpret in both ways. It's beautiful. I love it. I did not know that. And somebody else has a question. We still have a few minutes left. 10 minutes exactly. Please go for it.
In fact, it's not only a double, it's a triple sense, because terra means earth, but also land in Portuguese.
Right.
Thank you, Vic. No question. We can tell jokes also.
Nobody is curious. I asked so many questions that no one is left with more questions.
Well, I'll tell a story then if there are no more questions. Are there any more questions? I'll tell a story. Once I had this very interesting experience. I went to the Amazon and I lived in the Amazon for 10 days alone in a little hut. And every day somebody brought me some food, but otherwise I was in a retreat in the Amazon. And just like if you go on the Camino de Santiago, or you go to Vipassana, or you go any of these sort of things that take 10, 15, 20 days and you're sort of inside, there are different stages. And usually the first one is thinking, what the hell am I doing here? I could be at home sitting in a hot bath very comfortably. And then, the second stage is your mind tries to remember all the things, the email from last week and what you should or shouldn't have said. And by the third phase, you start to let all of these things go and you start to look around and smell and hear. And I started to notice that there was these rhythms to the nature that were incredible. I could tell what moment of the day it was just by the sounds or by the light or by what the animals were doing. The bats that were living in my thatched roof came out every day at exactly the same time. The chickens came out exactly the same time every day. And I noticed that all of the creatures had the same basic activities for the day. If there was a activity coordinator, it was, okay, guys, today we're going to go out and look for food, and we're not going to get eaten by any of the other people that want to eat us, for whom we are food, and we're going to find shelter by the end of the day, And I realized we were once in the same predicament, you know, or we still are. But in our way of building concrete buildings and windows and going to the supermarket, we've sort of, in our minds, removed ourselves from this reality of living with nature and the rhythms of nature and the soul of nature. And by the end of this period of 10 days, which I then later did again, I was extremely conscious of how much I was connected to nature, how much nature could teach me, that nature was our first teacher, if you want. And that this illusion we have that removes us more and more from the real essence of nature, whether it's tarmacking our, you know, asphalting our streets or building these concrete buildings, living in our energy regulated environment, it's just a very illusory experience, and it made me really appreciate nature very much. It's also probably one of the things that encouraged me to do what I'm doing today. Filipa. Filipa is doing the same thing, but in Castelo de Vide, right? Not Filipa there, but Filipa Meirelles, who's down in the bottom corner.
You said I'm doing the same thing. Which
well, when you go and live in your leaky house in the middle of the olives in.
Yes. With the rain falling from heaven in my head. Yes, it's amazing. You get in touch with this inner self that we normally forget with all the rhythm around us. And when you sit in silence, you remember that you were always connected, but we seem to forget. Yeah.
That's what I'd like to bring to this at the end of this conversation. Ivan, it sounded like you went into an enclosed womb-like safe space where food was brought to you, where you had a metanoia experience in the heart and you had a broader understanding. And it really brings us all to our common being in the womb. Womb life, womb ecology is world ecology. So if we come from this perspective, it doesn't matter what religion you are, where you are in the world, we all started as embryo. So it's a foundation or a spring point that we can come off of. And the artwork that I have behind me is about how to blend embryogenesis and our common indigenousness as nature. So yes, you can use art to teach.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. This is beautiful. I feel like we are floating slowly into the possible next conversation, which I just shared with you link for, which is on the 17th of December at the same time with forest artist Alan Todd. And I would love to express my deep, deep gratitude for everyone present today. I would love to thank Terra Agora for sharing this beautiful journey and sharing some beautiful insights and some triple meanings and letting us sink into that space and consider and meditate and going deeper and to reflect upon our own lives and our actions and think how we can all contribute. It's really good to have you here, and I'm hoping to continue this journey together and support each other on this path. And I invite everybody to join the growing community of Eternal Forest. There is a Facebook group for now. Next year we will be making a website, which we will try to make also interactive. So there's a bit of interaction involved in that as well. And I shared with you all, if you haven't seen yet, also the link for the presentation, what the project is. And as we are going to say goodbye to each other, if you want to share something on the chat, any links, anything you want to say, it will be all saved and sent to you together with the video. I just wanted to say that today for the conversation, there were more than 45 people who subscribed. We only have had 20 today with us, but they will all receive the link for the video, so many more people will see it. And of course, people will see it through my YouTube channel and Facebook, etc. So thank you so much, everybody, and we continue.
Thank you, Evgenia.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening. All the best.
Yeah.